All right, so we're just connecting with Zoom. It's linking it to Facebook, and then we'll get started. What's the weather? Did you guys get any snow over there? What's your weather like over there?
It's well, the sun is out. It's relatively warm for a December day. There was a little bit of light snow flurries yesterday, but it didn't stick and it wasn't thick.
Sure. Yeah, it's 60s over here. I'm
Oh,
very surprised. Yeah,
where
yeah.
you where are you at, by the way?
I am in Iowa,
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
in the Midwest. Yes, yeah. So, well, it looks like we're live, so we are on. And so for those of you who are tuning in, people will probably tune in a couple minutes as the Facebook goes. But welcome to Real Talk with Rue. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Jeffrey, and then pronounce your last name for me.
Escovic.
Deskovic. Deskovic. Okay. Jeffrey Deskovic. So I'm super excited to be talking to Jeffrey. Jeff, I have learned about your story through Gia. We
Ah,
just
yes.
interviewed Gia a few weeks ago, and she's a dear friend of mine. And I saw the short, and it was very moving. And um, yeah, I'd love for people to just hear about who you are and a little bit about yourself. You can start off with.
Yeah, sure. And since you referenced it, the name of the short is called Conviction, and it is available on Amazon Prime. And it's about my advocacy work and, of course, my life afterwards, post exoneration, and a little bit, obviously, my backstory. So your question now is, let me ask you. Can you ask me the question again, please?
Oh, 100%. So just if you can share a little bit about who you are and a little bit about, um, yeah, just who you are and your story. You have an amazing story, which you didn't think you were going to have, but
Right.
but if you can share a little bit
Of
about
course.
your journey.
Of course. So I'm an advocate. As of October 26th, I'm an attorney as well, and
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm the founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has as its mission freeing people who are wrongfully imprisoned, as well as pursuing policy changes that are aimed at preventing that from happening in the first place. I'm an advisory board member of the coalition group It Could Happen to You, and I also serve on the Global Advisory Council for Restorative Justice International. So I got started doing all of this advocacy work, and which I've been at for about 14 years, as a result of I was wrongfully imprisoned. I spent 16 years in prison. I was arrested when I was 16. I turned 17 just before the trial started, which I lost. So I was wrongfully convicted, despite a negative DNA test result, based upon a coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. And so I was wrongfully convicted of murder and rape, and I was given a 15 to life sentence, and ultimately I served 16 years in prison, losing 7 appeals and being turned down for parole along the way, prior to being exonerated by further DNA testing for the DNA data bank, which not only reaffirmed my innocence but also identified the actual perpetrator. So all charges against me were dismissed on actual innocence grounds, and he was arrested and charged with
Yeah. Yeah.
crime. So
Where do we even begin? Yeah,
that's
that's what
why
happened.
that's what
That's what,
happened, and that's why I do what I do. Yes,
and um and so I want to, talk a little bit about, so you were 15
16.
or 16. You were 16, and can you share a little bit about just you as a teenager?
Yeah, so I kind of think of myself as an all-American teen, in terms of my life after school. So in my teenage years, and again, I was 16 when I was arrested. I didn't think of it this way, but in reality, I kind of lived a double life, right? I mean, there was my life after school, and there was my life in school. So after school, I was kind of like the life of the party. It was me and one other youth. We were like the main ones out of this whole big group of kids that lived in the apartment complex that we grew up in. Peekskill was a suburban city in Westchester County, New York. So it was middle class, it was ethnically diverse. And pretty much whatever I suggested would be what we would do. So we would play kickball, basketball, riding bikes, playing Monopoly, video games, stickball. You name it, we did it. We even invented a few games ourselves. And so that was after school. But in school, it was different. I had skipped a grade yeah, early on in my scholastic career, I guess you could
You're
say.
a smarty.
Yes, sure. And so in high school, though, I mean, I was a year or two behind the rest of the students, so I wasn't quite into what they were into, and so I didn't fit in there, and I wasn't familiar with them, so I was kind of like quiet into myself. I was really like withdrawn, and I didn't fit in, so I was on the outskirts of the society in the school.
Sure. So, and the day, can you just share a little bit about the day that you were arrested?
Sure. So it was a school day. The so for about so first of all, I got on the police radar. The police interviewed a lot of students from the high school, and some of them told the police they might want to talk to me because I didn't, as I mentioned, I didn't quite fit in. As a reinforcing factor was this was really my first brush with death, and the police interpreted my being emotional and sentimental as some sort of outward sign that I was sorry for what I had done. And the third thing is they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator. And I had the misfortune of matching those characteristics. So before I was a teenager, I wanted to be a cop when I grew up. So in that intersected with what the police did. So all my interactions with them, half the time they would speak to me as if I was a suspect, and half the time, and the other half the time they would talk to me pretending like they needed my help to solve the crime. So they would say things like, "The kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you." Stop in from time to time. They'd ask me opinion questions and congratulate me that my opinions were correct. So I also came from a single parent household, and that also intersected with the good cop, bad cop technique, where one officer takes on a more aggressive role and the other one pretends to be your friend. So I began to look up to the officer who was pretending to be my friend as like a father figure. So eventually they got me to agree to take the lie detector test by telling me that some new information came into their file and they wanted to share that with me, and that would allow me to be more helpful to them. But first I would have to pass this polygraph test. So the next day, instead of going to the high school, I went to the police station for this test. My mother and grandmother thought I was in school, so they didn't call around. And they drove me from Peekskill, which is in Westchester County. They drove me across county lines to the town of Brewster in Putnam County. It was about 40 minutes away. And so I didn't have an attorney present. I wasn't given anything to eat the entire time that I was there. And they gave me countless cups of coffee and then attached me to a polygraph machine. And from there,
I'm just curious. You're saying they gave you several cups of coffee. Were you a coffee drinker, or were they just?
I was not a coffee drinker. No, I used to drink a cup of coffee on a special occasion. I was not a regular coffee drinker. So I think it's clear that the purpose of them giving me the coffee was to get me all wired up.
Wow.
So from there, they attached me to the polygraph machine, and then they launched into their third degree tactics. So they raised their voice at me. They invaded my personal space. They kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And they kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours.
You're okay, and your mom had thought you'd left to school, and so she didn't even know that you were with them. And wow, I couldn't even imagine just as a teenager to be in that space and and to be, thinking that you trust someone, and now I mean, I can't imagine the emotions that you were feeling in that time.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely dramatic. It was definitely dramatic. I mean, I felt overwhelmed psychologically and emotionally, and I felt in fear of my life as well. I mean, because I didn't know where I was, and I knew that no one else knew where I was either. And I was not used to talking with adult males. I mean, so
Yeah. So then, so then fast forward. So then they say they have the evidence, and you're the person, and so
Well, they coerced the false confession out of me after interrogating me for 6.5 to 7 hours, and threats and psychological tactics and false promises, and ultimately they got a false confession out of me. At the end of the interrogation, I had collapsed into a fetal position on the floor. I was crying uncontrollably.
oh gosh, you know, I think about, yeah, I just you're a regular kid and this is happening, and then you're being told then after that that you're being arrested, and and then share a little bit about that experience. Once you're in prison, what was life like as a kid? So you were there for, you said 15?
I was there for six. Well, I was given a 15 to life sentence, but I ultimately served 16 years in prison.
Yeah. So entering that space and not being able to, I mean, you can talk to your mom on the phone, but being in the space, how did you survive?
I think a number of things at the same time were true at the same time. And I mean, I did have to, um, fight off feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, thoughts of giving up, suicide ideation certainly came in my mind. So I had to fight the morale battle, and I was, also, fighting my case obviously in court. I think a number of factors helped me to survive. I mean, belief in God was one thing. Um, I used to go to the law library, and so learning about the law gave me a sense of comfort, of empowerment. I used to read articles about other people who were exonerated, and that would help me morale wise, help me to keep going. I used to read nonfiction books. I used to write letters looking for help, and I had this elaborate delusion when I would play sports. I'd play basketball, chess, ping pong, and I would pretend like I was a professional player, and so was everyone else. But it really wasn't like kids playing. This was like more of a defense mechanism. I needed to get out of the prison for a couple of hours. So all of those things were factors. I read 3 or 4 nonfiction books a week, and in terms of the prison programs that I took, I oriented everything that I took to having some kind of potential use, in the event that I, regain my freedom.
Sure. So what I'm hearing is you had hope. Like you're,
I did have hope. I mean, the prison itself was that was hell. Being in prison was, very dangerous there. There's a lot of violence that went on in the prison, and like gang activities, and then I was there for rape with a murder, which is a vigilante mentality for towards people who've been convicted of sex offenses. So it was very dangerous as well. Yeah. So yeah, I did have hope, but I also had fear in the back of my mind, and you always have to be alert and ready to defend yourself at the drop of a dime.
sure. Right. So with that, you're learning how to defend yourself. You're learning how to fight and protect yourself. And
Yes.
yeah, were you able to have some allies, build, a support system or friendships while you were there?
Well, there were activity partners. I mean, there's more activity partners. I wouldn't really say friends. I mean, just people you play. I mean, I have people I played basketball with, different people I played chess with, still others I played ping pong with, others I watched sports or talk sports with. But while that's the general rule, I mean, there were some people I broke the rules with. So maybe kind of saw that I had a friendship at maybe just one arm's length rather than several. You know, um, so there was that, and there was another person there, Frank Sterling, who was also innocent, and so we helped each other um, morale wise. I mean, we helped each other get through 13 and a half years. I mean, half our conversations, we'd meet up every 6 weeks. I mean, we would half the conversation might be about helping each other keep going morale wise, and the other half the time we would just be brainstorming, figuring out what the next move was to try to prove our innocence and regain our freedom. And, ultimately Frank was exonerated a couple of years after I was.
Oh, wow. Wow. Was that just by, I don't want to say coincidence, but did you help him get out, or was it, or,
Uh, well, the same organization that exonerated me, the Innocence Project, exonerated him. So I wouldn't say that I was part of this case, but I did what I could. I mean, I did raise awareness about his case. I mean, at my press conference when I was released, I started talking about his case, and when I went back to court where they dismissed the case against me, I was talking about his case, and I became a columnist and I wrote about his case, and I did speak about it to some other media outlets. And so actually, when he was exonerated, the local reporter remembered that I spoke about him before, and so he wrote like an article about Frank's case. I mean, Frank's case was about 5 hours north from me, but the local reporter wrote an article about it with the local angle, that I'm recalling that I had spoke about it, and the article was called "I Believed in His Innocence."
oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. Do you still keep in touch?
I did. I did. I mean, he passed away after being home for 7 years. So Frank had did 18 years, and then he was home for 7, and then he passed away. So I did keep in touch with him. In fact, I drove up to the courthouse to see, when he was coming home. I narrowly missed the train by like 5 minutes, but I wasn't about to miss the thing. So I made a 5 hour trip on my own driving up. Um, I spent his first 4 days of freedom with him.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. I'm thinking about how you can, you need something, and I'm thinking about how, like, that drive or that motivation to keep you going. And I'm sure while you're there, you don't know really what the days are like. All the days kind of merge together. Um, I mean, in a weird way, like you think about right now with quarantine and with COVID, like this is cake. Like I feel like this is cake for you. I mean,
Well,
the
it is in the sense that, it's not in the sense that it's much different than what the terms of imprisonment were there. I mean, here, there's no issue with communication. There's a cell phone, there's Zoom, and other platforms, and you have computers and access to the internet and television, and you know streaming, certain Netflix and Amazon, and all these different ways of entertainment. And certainly the food is good, and you don't have the violence and everything else going on. There's no one in charge. The COs are not around, so in all that ways, you're right, it is. But on the same time, I will say that for myself and quite a bit of the other exonerees, because I have a large network of other exonerees I'm in touch with, and this does trigger us though,
like that.
because in a lot of there are certain commonalities which are that psychological trigger. I mean, just the limitation on being able to go anywhere. There's certainly restrictions in terms of visits, and I feel like everything is you're very limited in terms of being able to carry out plans, and everything is projected to some future point in time in the future. That you'll do certain things, and that point in time in the future is simply unknown, and even keeps getting extended in certain in certain ways. So I wouldn't say that this is completely easy either. I mean, it does have that crossover, which, as I mentioned, it does trigger a lot of us.
Sure, sure. How just having the psychological effects of different ways of, you're in prison for so long, so how does that work for technology or all these advancements that have
Yeah,
happened throughout the years?
yeah, I had to learn technology when I was released. I mean, the world of technology had moved on. Internet, GPS, cell phones, these things didn't exist before. Culture was different, and cities and towns looked different. So taken cumulatively, it often felt like I was in an alternative universe.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's an out of body experience, or you're going like it's back to the future, or back into the future.
Yeah, so so I did feel like I didn't quite fit in, and I did feel like, this is not really my world. This isn't really where I belong. But then I knew I didn't belong in the prison either, because I hadn't done anything. So in a certain ways, I felt I was neither fish nor fowl. So and in a lot of ways, I mean, the world inside the prison is not comparable to out here. So in many ways, that's a different world, just like this is a different world. So it is kind of like being dropped into a different world.
So what was your connection with the outside world while you were in?
Yeah. So, well, my mother came to see me, um, but the last 6 years, I mean, I saw her what once every 6 months. And I did have a couple sets of aunts and uncles. They would visit and disappear for 3 years, and visit and disappear for 3 years. My brother came to see me 3 times in the 16 years, not at all in the last decade. So I did have some of that. And then my extended family did not come to see me at all. So in a lot of ways, I did the time myself. I mean, not from an absolute literal point of view, but the net impact of it. But to the extent that those limited visits, like I described, did happen, that was part of the connection to the outside. Uh, I would use the phone, but again, I would mainly just talk to my mother once in a blue moon to my aunt and uncle, but mainly to my mother. So there was the phone. There was mail, but again, people in general, people were not writing, so I was not getting mail except for an occasional letter or card, but that was very sparse. If I got 6 in a year, that would be a lot. I I used to listen to sports talk radio, but it really wasn't listening to sports talk radio. It was more like a lifeline it was a lifeline to the outside. Occasionally there would be volunteers who'd come into the prison, and that was like a breath of fresh air to be able to talk to someone else from the outside. I mean, I can't quite synthesize how that's different from talking to someone that's either another prisoner or is working in the prison security or civilian, but how that differentiates from a volunteer. But it is different. So those were ways of keeping up. It was very hard to come by newspapers, but whenever I could get my hands on one, I would read it. Very limited access as far as the news, but to the extent that we could hear news, I mean, I guess that was another way of keeping up a little bit to the outside. And again, I did watch sports. There was always like each prison always had like a sports TV that was designated specifically for that. So you could keep up with that to the extent that the sports is part of the culture and keeping up with things.
Yeah, something to look forward to, something to listen to.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I love Sundays, man, because there would be I had this radio, and we called it a super radio because the signal was good, and that was actually how it was marketed. That was the name of it. So on Sundays were great because so I had this routine, and this was from 1997 forward, where the prison where I spent most of the time in Elmira, they gave us televisions in the cells. So you had a few limited channels. So on Sunday, football Sunday, so I'd have the game on TV with no sound. I would be listening to the super radio, listening to a different game because those were the teams that I liked listening to. That's not
Nice.
what I could watch. So I'd watch one game, I'd be listening to another one. And that was at 1 o'clock. Then there was the 4 o'clock game. And then of course they would have Sunday night football, which would just be on the radio. So that was my routine as far as Sundays. And there was certain limited food items that you could cook. And so there was a neighbor who was in the cell next to me. We kind of hustled together. So people would send food over for him to cook. And so the way that we got paid was they would send enough food over for him to eat. And him and I would just, would divide things. So I'd be there, you know, I'd be cooking some of the meal and he'd cook the entree and I'd cook the boring stuff. I would heat the rice up and the vegetables and I might clean the fish when we had that, but he'd cook the main thing. So we had this whole routine down. So we would get up and I'd start prepping everything around 10:30, 11 o'clock and listening to sports talk radio and they're talking about the upcoming games and the meal would always be ready by like game time, like 1 o'clock, certainly not later than midway through the first quarter. So Sundays were a bright spot for me. And
Sunday.
yeah, and then Thursday night there was this wrestling show called SmackDown, which I used to watch, and people would watch, and you'd hear everybody laughing about. The funniest part of it would be like the skits, the skits would be how people would have like the storylines and they're in character and they're, you know, talking about what their goals are or this rivalry or this upcoming match or whatever. And then you'd watch the match and you pretend that it's all real just to try to
Oh.
just to try to increase the entertainment value. But you know, but we're leaving the prison for, you know, look, if there's a chance to laugh while you're in hell, I mean, look, damn it, I got to do it. Okay.
This is my joy. Don't take this away from me.
Yeah, it's one of the few things, right? So, yeah, those things, those habits. I learned to play. You know, you know, we, sometimes necessity is kind of like the mother of ingenuity. So, uh, uh, those of us who played chess, so there was an innovative way of playing chess when you're in your cell. Like you're in the cell by yourself, unless you're in one of those cells with somebody. But most people are not in the cell. So the prison, we had our own way of playing. Like each square had a certain number to it, and so you could hear people playing. They might say 15 to 5, or 7 takes 32, or something like, yeah. So you could hear people. You could hear play. I played like that, and
Oh,
you could hear people. You could hear people playing that way too. So I mean, we do that when you're in the cell, and of course, and you're in the recreation, you play in person. So
yeah, being creative. You be creative of what you have. And I'm sure that this also led you to live like simple. Like I'm imagining you well, let's talk about a little bit when you found out that you're getting out. Like you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this day and then, you
yeah.
get
Yes. So by the time I got the news that that I was going to be released, by that point, just for context, I had lost 7 appeals already, and I had gotten turned down for parole as well. And then I wrote an uncountable amount of letters for 4 years, and each one of those no letters or non-responses, which became no's, that's all part of the body of disappointment that I had to deal with. So by the time I got the news, I had learned not to have any hope because it was too hard. The hurt was too much. The hurt was too much every time you get a disappointment. So my lawyer came to see me, and maybe I'll take like a quick minute or two here. So the guards open your cell, right? And you're supposed to go and ask them, what do you open in the cell? What do you want? Where am I going? Why'd you open my door? So he yelled down at me, visit. I mean, are you sure? Why don't you double check that? Because it's not unheard of for them to open the wrong cell. And you go all the way down there and, come to find out nobody came to see you. You got to go back, and then the real person is
ouch.
supposed to come out. Yeah, that hurts. That hurts. But, of course, being lighthearted to try to get out of hell. If we learned that happened to somebody, we would start laughing at them right away. Just gallows humor, is dark humor. So anyway, I asked him double check, and he said yes. So we all have this routine. I had this routine that you have like a visit shirt. So this is your like good shirt. So I'm putting this visit shirt on as I'm hurrying up down there because you have to get in by a certain amount of time before the prison starts doing a count. Once there's a count, if you're not in the visiting room, you have to wait for the count to clear. And that might take like anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. So you don't want to get caught in the count. So I'm running, and as I'm running, I'm adjusting my shirt, and I'm thinking to myself, like, who the heck came to see me? So I get in the visiting room, and this was in a prison, by the way, Sing Sing, which I had only been there for 28 days, so I was like new to that particular prison. So this lady is waving at me, and I'm thinking, well, maybe she's mistaking me for someone else, or maybe she knows me from a different visiting room. She's seen me there, so I'd be polite and I wave back, but then I asked the guard, well, who came to see me? And so the guard looks at me like I'm nuts, and then said, "That's your visitor right there. Don't you know who it is?" So I don't want them to cancel this visit. So I just said, yeah. So I just
Oh,
laughed. I
yeah,
said, yeah, sure. Right. Yeah. So I walk up to the lady who's waving at me, and she tells me that she mentions her name as my attorney. So that was the first time I never saw a picture of her before. So it's the first time I met her, and she tells me the items have been tested. So I'm on the lookout for like anything out of order or out of the ordinary, because I've lost all these appeals that I really
Sure.
should have won, since I'm innocent, right? And the arguments were pretty good that were being made on my behalf. So she says, well, the items have been tested. So I said, what are you talking about? They're not supposed to be tested for another month. And so she says, no, the DA pulled some strings and the items have been tested. You're going home tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I was like, my response was, no, I'm not. And so we went back and forth 3 times. And then I had kind of like a mental paralysis for like 3.5 hours. Like where she like literally sat there and held my hand, and every now and my mind was spinning, and I was bringing up all these different topics. One subject having nothing at all to do with the other. And every now and then she would break in and say, are you ready to talk about tomorrow? And I'm like, no, look, just no, get that away from me. It's not happening. No, I'm not going home tomorrow. Okay, you're not building me up just to let me down. It's not going to happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so there was like 3.5 hours of that. And eventually what made it real for me was when she said, look, there's only like a half hour. And she got there in the morning, maybe like around 10:15, 10:30. And by now it was closing in on 3 o'clock. So she says, look, there's only like about half hour left here. And, there's a ton of work to do between now and tomorrow. I have to get your shoe size, the size for your suit, and we got to do some work with the media. So that kind of is what made it real for me when she said that. But of course, then by that point, a different fear entered my head. Like minutes later, I thought that something was going to happen between that day and the next.
Mm, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So
When you've been hurt so much, right? You have to put that protective shield on, and then so the day of. So were you like?
I
Was there
stayed,
a lot
look,
of
I stayed,
praying?
look,
Was there a lot of?
yeah, so I didn't sleep. Okay, so first of all, I
Yeah.
went to recreation that night, and the Innocence Project had left one of the law students that they work there as interns. They left one of them in their office to speak to me on the phone. So it was kind of this bizarre conversation. I'm on the phone. I'm in the prison yard, and I'm seeing all the visual cues. So I'm seeing the other prisoners in the prison uniform. I'm seeing the guards. There's the prison wall. There's the barbed wire. There's the gate. There's the towers. All these things remind me of the prison. And yet I'm talking to somebody on the phone about going home tomorrow as if none of those things exist. And then it's a stranger at that. It's not, I had never talked to that person ever in my life. So it was kind of it was a bizarre situation. And so that was, and then from there, I couldn't sleep that night. So I stayed up, and the prisoner in the cell next to me, I knew him from, this was like the second prison that we had been in together. So he agreed to stay up that night with me. He's in one cell, I'm in the next. And we have, he held out like, he had like, there's a mirror, he had a mirror. And so we would take turns holding the mirror with our hand so that we can look at each other as we're talking to each other, because the cells are right next to each other. They're all parallel. And so he stood up with me, in my mind, in mind, I couldn't sleep, the adrenaline,
Oh,
and eventually and by the way, I'll mention real quick. I mean, we're doing human interest. This is a
yeah.
conversation, said,
Yeah.
right? So he talked the guard into, this is before they knew that I was going to court, right? So he talked the guard into letting me take a shower before I went to court. And they're like, which seems like a minor thing, but like he took a big chance. Like if he had been lied to, or if I had acted up once I got out of my cell and he had to call for backup or help, after the situation was in control, they would have been, well, what the hell did you let him out for? What are you doing? I mean, he could have gotten a lot of trouble for that, but the human kindness. So he let me take the shower, and then shortly after that, they brought me a bunch of bags to like pack my things up, and so I separated. So I remembered this story Okay, I remember this story. When I first went to prison, you know, past not the county jail or even the reception center, but a regular prison. I remember hearing two people, they were talking, they were in their cell, and one person, I heard one person say to another, man, if I win my appeal and I go home, it's going to be like somebody in here won the lottery because I'm going to leave them everything. I'm not taking nothing home with me, you know.
Yeah.
So that thought entered my mind. I remembered that, and I decided to live another man's dream. So I
Oh,
separated my things, like just a few things that I thought were essential that I had to take and put in one bag, and everything else I put in these other bags. So my cell door cracked. I had this huge, I put this big thing over my thing. Look, Santa Claus didn't have anything on
yep.
me that day, right? Okay. And so my cell door cracks. And so I run real fast down to the other end of the cell gallery. It would be like running the distance of half a block. And I brought this stuff down to this other prisoner that was just getting started, you know, on his sentence, and he didn't have any contact from the outside. So I said, here, man. And he said, oh my God, thank you. Never mind that. Just hurry up and put the stuff in
Thank
yourself
you.
before they come, because you're not allowed to give anybody anything in there either.
Oh,
So he had to hurry up. And so then I run back down to my cell and I get the second bag, you know, and then I go back and get the third bag and I run it down there. And then I hear the guard yelling, you know, Deskovic, what the hell are you doing up there? Get your down here now. I'm coming. Yeah, meanwhile, I got to run back and get the
sweating.
stuff I am bringing. Yes, I'm sweating and everything. I run down there to the and I run and get my stuff, and I come down and I come downstairs. So put it in the bag, and they run me through the mess hall. And as I'm walking, I'm looking for people that I know, because this is like theoretically the last time I'm going to like see them. So I'm looking for people I know, and I'm waving to
Saying
people, and I'm
goodbyes.
saying, yeah, I'm going home. Yeah, yeah. So then we got to the part where they processed everything, and they said, look, we're not even the stuff I took. They said we're not carrying that for you to the court. All right, so you get the small bag here, and everything else will be mailed. So the only address I knew at that point, just to show you how cut off I had been at that point, the only address I knew at that was the Innocence Project. So I put that down to send
Wow.
a little bit of things out, right? So they give me the ID for everything, and it's time to go. And they try to put these handcuffs and chains and everything on me, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? You just processed me. You know I'm going to court to go home. In fact, you gave me you took my photograph, and you gave me the temporary ID. I mean, what do you think? I'm going to try to escape on my way to the courtroom while where I'm going to be let out legally? Is that the security threat you're preventing now? So but again, I mean, when does common sense carry the day in prison, right? So I had to put the stuff on anyway. I remember one of the guards told me, look, don't worry about it, Mr. Deskovic. This is the last time you're going to be in chains the rest of your life.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
so they put it on there, and they put me in this vehicle, and they drive out. And Sing Sing was located in the town of Austin, which I had been in a few times over the years prior to ever being arrested. So I'm looking out the window, and I'm recognizing streets and everything that I used to see. And as I saw people walking on the sidewalk and people in other cars, and I kind of marveled, how just a few feet of steel just separated my reality from theirs, and how they were like totally unaware of what was going on. And I remember I got into the court, and I was waiting. I had me waiting in different areas like for a while, and my lawyer told me that Barry Scheck, the co-founder of the Innocence Project, that he was going to come and see me once I got to the court, just to remind me and let me know that we were still all good. This is still happening.
right,
And
right.
it said that a suit would be provided for me, but as 2 or 3 hours go by, and there's no signs of a lawyer or this suit. And the guards had offered me this meal. It was this terrible thing in this brown bag, and it's this sandwich has been made up the night before with bologna on it and cheese, so it's all
And
moist.
that's, you're saying it's bad. You've had prison food, so it
It was,
must have been.
yeah, yeah, right. You know, and the small bag of chips that's mostly air and this apple. So I don't want to eat. I told the guard I don't want to eat that. And look, well, I have to give it to you. What you do with it after that is up to you. So I take the thing and I set it down to the side. But after like 3 hours go by and there's no signs of the soup and there's no signs of Shek, I'm thinking, well, maybe I better eat that because by the time I'm done here and get sent back to the prison, it's going to be past lunchtime. They're not going to, I know damn well they're not making anything for me to eat prior to dinner. So I better eat this now. I need this. So I eat it. And eventually, and again, they're moving me from holding area to holding area, moving up further and further in the building. So eventually I get the soup. And so I'm walking down the hallway with them. And, that's when this sergeant gets the, he being very security conscious, he wants me to walk on the side of the hallway furthest from the other courtroom doors that we're passing by. Again, like I'm going to run through the door and make a break for it, right? En route to where I'm supposed to go home. This is ridiculous. So you get outside the court and they tell me, look, your family's on one side of the room and there's a bunch
Oh,
of
your
you
family
there
was
on the other.
there.
Well, they had been called, so they all showed up for that, but I was not focused in on them because most of them hadn't come to see me. I
Yeah.
was focused on the other end of the court, all these members of the media that had basically crucified me while I was going to trial with all these guilt presumptive oriented articles. So I was looking for anyone I could see, just,
Wow.
I told you so, that type of thing.
Yes, yes, that's the piece that yeah, I would love to hear about your relationship with your family and just, that piece. I know you've got, you have a hard stop. So I'm looking at the time. So I'm thinking we need to do a part two.
I
So
would love to do a part two. Yes.
that would be so great. We could do a part two and share. This is the cliffhanger. What was
Yeah,
it like to connect with your family again and to actually walk out those doors, and where did you live, and finding meaning and purpose again. So
absolutely. Yes, there will be a part two.
okay, let's do a part two. I would love that. I thank you. I thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience, your time, and let's do this again. Let's schedule part two. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure.
It's been a pleasure, Jeffrey.
It
Jeff. So formal, Jeffrey. No,
is true. Thank
thanks,
you.
Jeff.
Thank
All
you.
right, we'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Okay, I think we are live. All right, here we go. All right, well, welcome for those of you tuning in for Real Talk with Rue. We are doing a live part two with Jeff. Jeff Deskovic. We talked to him. We talked to you, Jeff, last week, and got a little bit. We got to hear a little bit about your journey and about your journey of being wrongly accused and being in prison and being a young kid, and just kind of how that affected you during your sentence. And I know we have some questions. I've been getting some questions from some viewers, but then today I also want to share and talk about life after prison and where you are today. But for those tuning in and who have not met you or learned about you before, can you just share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the founder and president of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has its mission freeing people who are wrongfully imprisoned and pursuing policy changes aimed at preventing that. Thus far, we've freed 9 people. We've helped change three laws in New York. We're part of an advisory board member of a coalition group called It Could Happen to You, which the foundation is part of, and we helped pass 4 additional laws. And I also serve on the Global Advisory Council to Restorative Justice International. Hopefully later on today, we can talk about the overlap of restorative justice into the world of wrongful conviction. So I have a master's degree. I have a thesis written on wrongful conviction cause and reform. And as of October 26th, I'm also an attorney. I got into all this advocacy work because I spent 16 years in prison for a murder and rape, which I didn't commit. I was 16 years old when I was arrested. I was ultimately wrongfully convicted despite a pre-trial negative DNA test result based upon coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. I lost 7 appeals. I got turned down for parole. And ultimately, I was exonerated through further DNA testing via the DNA data bank obtained with the assistance of the Innocence Project, which not only reaffirmed my innocence, but also identified the actual perpetrator who had his DNA was in the data bank because he killed a second victim as a result of being left free while I was doing time for his crime. So that's who I am. I'm an advocate, I was an attorney, and my motivation is that I was exonerated. So I always it's very important for me. I define myself as an advocate, just with a body of work, and with that as my motivating factor, rather than just being put in a box of just simply being exonerated.
Yes. I mean, ooh, just we talked about it last time, but the just, oh, go ahead.
Just want to mention one other thing. I'm sorry. And of course, this our whole interview is being the second time. Of course, is a build off of a prior interview we did with Gia Wirtz. There is a documentary which is available on Amazon Prime called Conviction, which is about my advocacy work and life afterwards. You had previously interviewed Gia. The film has been selected in 11 different film festivals and has won 3 different awards. The Award of Distinction, Best Documentary, and Best Cinematography.
Yes, yeah, it's getting a lot of notice, as
A
it
lot of
should.
love,
A
right?
lot of love. Yes. I mean, and how could it not? I mean, you are just a delight to talk to and just to hear your story and your journey and your persistence. I mean, yes, you have your master's. I mean, after all of this, after getting turned down 7 times for appeals, right?
Yes.
Uh, 7 times. And you talked about it last time about just having that resiliency and kind of like, don't tease me. Don't tell me I'm going to get out of here, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, because the disappointments are frequent and those hurt. How can you have hope, or how can you pray for a result and not come to believe or expect it? And so when you get turned down, I did. I mean, that hurts a lot. That hurts a lot emotionally and psychologically for sure. It's almost like being wrongfully convicted all over again.
Yeah, yeah, feeling those ouches. And a question that we were thinking about, and I had some listeners asking was, I want to rewind a little bit of when you were wrongfully convicted. Like what was the reason? Why you? Why did they choose you?
Yeah, in other words, how did I get on? How did the police choose me, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there were three factors. So first of all, because I was quiet and to myself, it didn't quite fit in the high school. Some of the kids told the police they might want to focus in on me. Right? I guess the underlying thought is people that don't fit in, who are quiet or to themselves, maybe seem a little weird, that they commit heinous crimes. Right? I think maybe was the underlying thinking as to why other people in the high school would even bring my name up to the police. So that was one factor. A second factor was that I was a sensitive teenager, and this was really my first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction to the victim being killed. She was a classmate in 2 of my classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore, and so the police interpreted. They thought that there was something weird, that my emotional reaction was disproportionate to what my relationship with the victim was, which was really no relationship. We were not even on a high-by basis. So they thought that that was some sign that I was sorry for something that I had done, with a third reinforcing factor being that the Peekskill Police, they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator. And I had the misfortune of matching those characteristics. So a type of reinforcing factor.
Yeah.
Just, and it was just tunnel vision from there.
So, I mean, was there a description? Did you match the characteristics? I'm curious, the person that they finally found guilty.
Yes, the person that they finally found. So the report stated that it was very likely somebody that knew the victim, the actual perpetrator. At the time of the crime, the victim was 15. I was 16. The actual perpetrator, who also lived in the city of Peekskill, he was 29 years old. So they didn't. The victim and her murderer did not know each other. The report predicted that it was likely somebody in the high school, which he was not in the high school. Yeah. So to there was a study done on my case that was put out by the Westchester District Attorney's Office, and in that it was called "Report on the Wrongful Conviction of Jeffrey Deskovic." And within that report, when they get to the topic of the psychological profile, to quote almost verbatim from the report, that they stated that that profile was quote unquote wildly inaccurate.
Hmm. So then, did he have prior cases or?
He had prior drug convictions.
Mhm. So then he gets arrested. You get you are freed. We talked a little bit about, your relationship with your family, that you weren't able to see them. Well, you didn't see them very much while you were away. So tell a little bit. Let's start from, you seeing them outside of the prison for the first time. What was that like?
Yeah, that was it. Well, I mean, there was at the well, so there was literally outside. I mean, at the press conference, and then there was subsequent, and there were just limited people that came, some of them, but then there were other people other members of my extended family that did not come, but I would see them later on as life unfolded. So
Oh, are you there?
I didn't really attach very much meaning or emotion to that relationship because it was limited contact, and again, I just I didn't want to get hurt,
Yeah.
so. Um, there was that aspect. There were two people that showed up that never I was never in contact in any shape, form, or fashion while I was incarcerated, and frankly remember just being resentful of the fact that they were there. I mean,
Yeah. You're going in and out a little bit.
I didn't say
Other-
anything, but I remember having that reaction. And later, as time unfolded, and I would bump into various cousins and other members of the family, it was kind of awkward because I knew who they were because from memories from when I was younger, but I was a different person now. They were different people as well. And when you are not in touch with people over a prolonged period of time, that evolution of growth and forming and changing of personalities, the gulf was big. The gulf was big, and I found it hard to communicate. So that was difficult. On their end, a commonality in the reaction of many of them, there appeared to be like a collective guilt on their part, that they didn't support me, that they didn't maintain contact on the morale level, and that several times when my mother had approached them, and the idea was everybody put in a manageable amount of money so that collectively we could hire a lawyer so I could have the legal professionals that I needed to try to find some new evidence and become exonerated. Everybody had declined to participate in that, and so people were feeling guilty about that as well.
Wow. So
Maybe
they thought in their mind, they're like, well, he,
well, they believed in my innocence. They
yeah.
said that they believed my being
Oh.
innocent. It's just that their belief in my innocence did not translate into them assisting in any way.
Hmm.
Probably the most unusual um, response or interaction or dialogue, however you want to phrase it, happened with one of my cousins. So her stepfather, worked in law enforcement. He was actually a marshal in Yonkers, which is another city within Westchester County, New York. And when he had spoken to the Peekskill police after I was arrested, they convinced him that, law enforcement, that I was guilty.
Mm.
So he thought that I was guilty, and he passed that thought down to his stepdaughter. So those two thought that I was guilty.
Wow. Yeah. And through all of this, your mom,
Mhm.
you saw her a little bit, and then that day she was there. You were able to hug your mom that day.
I was able to hug my mother. Yeah, she was my only consistent visitor. But again, just getting into the weeds a little bit. I mean, in the last 6 years, I would see her like once every 6 months if I was, if I was lucky.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I did hug her. I did hug her on the outside the courthouse. Yeah, that was kind of like an emotional moment.
Yeah. And how is your relationship now? Now it's been another, has it been another 15 years?
Close. It's been 14 years. I've been home for 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it was very rocky at first, the first couple of years. One of the issues was just that I felt like she really didn't. Um, you can't do anything for yourself while you're incarcerated. You're totally dependent upon other people to look information up, make a phone call, you know, run one kind of errand or another in connection with the case. And she was really my only lifeline. And I never really felt that she acted with any kind of urgency as to anything that I needed, and so that did lead to very difficult times,
Mhm.
at times. So it was stormy for the first few years, and but I'll say maybe the last few years, I feel like we're in a better place now.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about just the emotional, just even navigating your emotions and being
Yeah.
able to feel and yeah, the betrayal or just lack of trust or feeling that and working through some of that. So I can only imagine now just how that shows up, in different ways, in different, in just instances with people. It's a flashback or a memory or yeah.
Right, but an interesting human interest piece, though, tied into your question, which actually hasn't come out publicly at all. So you heard it here first, right? So I've met several cousins for the first time ever. Yeah. I mean, I have a cousin, Dave, who lives in Niagara Falls, and I met him for the first time not too long before the pandemic started. And I also have another cousin named Ed, who lives in Ocala in Florida.
Mhm.
So I met both of them for the first time. We had a little bit of talk just through Facebook Messenger. So social media kind of brought us together. I mean, I, I think I put my last name Deskovic in, and their names came up, and I had heard their names before,
Huh.
so I knew that they were related. I knew that they were related to me, and so that was kind of like an emotional get together with Ed. And with Dave. It was more like a really pleasant type of thing because Dave is the only person in my family that we look alike. We
Oh.
look similar. We look similar in our face. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was kind of a fun time. And I feel like we were both kind of like in the same place in the aspect that they were looking for more family contact in general, you know and and I was kind of looking for some of that too. And we had some things in common, and we thought alike in certain ways. So we were all kind of like in the same place in that aspect of it.
So So then, coming out of prison, finding like where did you stay? Where did you go? What do you do? Because, you have to, your clothes don't fit anymore. You're starting over.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first couple of days I spent with my Aunt Janet and Uncle Ray. They had a house in Nanuet, which is in Rockland County, which is I want to say it's maybe like well, it's right over the bridge. There's Westchester County, and then there's Rockland, and you're separated by the Tappan Zee Bridge. So maybe it's like a 25-minute ride rather. So I spent a couple of days with them. My mother was there, and then I spent about 3 days in my mother's apartment. She had moved from Peekskill to Cobleskill, so it was very rural there. I mean, just to illustrate, bus service was door to door,
Mm.
and you have to ride like about an hour to get to a train station.
Mhm.
So I really felt like I didn't want to live there, and I really felt like opportunities were extremely limited, and there's not really a chance to rebuild your life uh, up there. So this woman contacted me, and she sent me $100 to take a train to come back down to Peekskill just to rest. So I didn't know her, but I had played with her son when we were kids, but I didn't remember her, but she remembered me, and she mentioned who her son was. So I took that as my chance to get the heck out of Cobleskill.
I'm free.
Yeah, so I packed a little bit the little bit of property that I had, and I jumped on the train. And my plan was just to visit from person to person and just stay down there until I could get some kind of stability of housing. But no matter what, I was determined I was not going back to Cobleskill. So I wound up staying with her for 2 weeks. Then I stayed at a church rectory for a few days, and then this religious community put me up in an apartment. It was at a community apartment there for about 4 months, and then when I lost that, I was a couple of weeks away from the homeless shelter because I was always passed over for gainful employment. The technology had passed me by, and all the would-be employers all seemed to want somebody who could hit the ground running rather than having some patience to do on-the-job training. So Mercy College, which had given me the scholarship to finish the bachelor's degree and the meal plan covering the books, they allowed me to live on campus. So that was how I avoided the homeless shelter. So I was there for about maybe about 6 months, something like that. And then from there, just as that term was almost up, Human Development Services of Westchester, I found them, and I happened to fit the mental health criteria of clients that they would service. So so they rented an apartment for me, and I just had to give them 30% of whatever it is I made in the course of a month, even if that was nothing. So that was where I lived first. So my first couple of years after the bouncing around in the college. So I want to say maybe after 8 months of being home, that's where I came to live at for the next couple of years.
How old were you at the time?
I was released at 32, so this would have been between 32 and 33.
So, I think of this kind of, I don't want to similarity, or like someone who's a vet or just, coming
It is.
back
No,
into
it is. When you
civilian life.
when experts have studied the impact of wrongful incarceration, the closest thing that they come to, the closest analogy they say is almost like a soldier who's coming back from combat. It is similar in many ways. So you have to try to readjust the civilian life. There's often PTSD and related symptoms as well, and there's also a camaraderie with people that have also been in the military, whether they were served together or not. Just the fact of being in combat, there's like a camaraderie and language that's spoken there, and all those analogies hold true for people who were exonerated.
Mhm. Yeah. I just am picturing in your 30s and you're starting over. And then at this time, I was in Manhattan during 9/11. I lived out there. So I'm just trying to think time wise, if you were out by then. I mean, I'm
No,
just
it
thinking
was released in 2006.
2006. So I'm thinking about just coming, like you're going back to Manhattan or you're just seeing things that you remember seeing and then
Yeah, Westchester
things
Shore. I made trips to Manhattan, of course.
and things looking so different and modern and technology and buildings
And
and
culture, all
culture.
those things together made it feel like I was like a fish out of water. Like this was an alternative universe. This wasn't really my world.
Mhm. Yep. And but something that keeps coming, which holds true for you, is that you did have the resiliency because you kept finding solutions and you kept
Yes,
you
yeah, there it is. Yeah,
yeah, finding a home, finding ways, you're like, I don't want to live with family, that's for sure. So I'm going to find a way to create my life. And
yeah, sure. Even just trying to, even succeeding in finding a way to uh, convert my, the advocacy work I did to, having some income. I mean, I was doing public speaking, and I was, earning some money that way. And I caught on as a weekly columnist for a newspaper, for an
oh,
independent
wow.
newspaper. Yes, the Westchester Guardian. So I did that for about 4 years. So, between that was the newspaper was my only consistent form of income, and then that was supplemented at times, occasionally by speaking engagements, and then sometimes I would get donate a few donations here and there when I would speak.
Yeah. So you would go for it. And
Yeah.
so how did you get into, did someone approach you? Like what was it, finding, yes, public speaking with your life experience and then
So I
also
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, and also having that drive to say I want to help more people and gosh, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to school and I'm going to fight this system and I'm going to.
Yeah, sure. So when I was at the lady's house, her first name was Leester, who had sent the $100 to me. I was in her living room, and she asked me what I wanted to do with my life. And I remember reading while I was wrongfully imprisoned that some of the people that are exonerated, they take to the speaking circuit. So when I mentioned that to her, she connected me to her nephew, who was a concert promoter. So he was willing to take this challenge on. I mean, as he put it, look, I don't know anything about public speaking, but I can figure it out. And on the contractual side of negotiating deals and contracts and all of that, you're not going to go wrong with me because I know that part of it. I know. And so
Mhm.
yeah, so that was how I got started on doing public speaking. In terms of the college education, so I rather foolishly was thinking that I was too old to go to college, that was just something I wanted to do a long time ago, but that ship sailed already. But I really believe that when you make the right decisions and you work hard, then at the right key moments, the right people or the right opportunities will show up. From the lady sending me the $100 to the nephew helping with the speaking career. And I had in my mind that when I was interviewed by the independent paper, they were coming to interview me as a subject matter of an article, but I figured, well, let me talk about all these other different issues, and you know I'll just answer questions about my story and my case as they get them in. But maybe if I can impress them, maybe they'll offer me the chance to write for them, because they had just started like a month before that. And so that worked. They had to schedule another meeting with me. They realized afterwards, well, wait, we didn't talk to you about your story. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know, but I didn't say that to them. But they did offer me the chance to write an article, for pay. And I thought, if I really slam this out of the park, maybe they'll let me write another one if I do good there. And so I parlayed that into, a month or 4 years rather. But coming back to the point, in terms of the school, so it was in the daily newspaper in Westchester. One of the human interest items about one of the articles about me was that I was 10 credits short of the bachelor's degree, So I had gotten the GED while I was in prison. I had completed the associates. I completed a year towards the bachelor. So again, making good decisions on my part. You have to make good decisions to put yourself in position for some kind of miracle or something to happen. It generally just doesn't all come just like that. You have to put yourself in position. So I did those things, and then the funding was cut, college education for prisoners. And so it made it into the newspaper that that was 30 credits short of the bachelor's degree, which is 10 classes short. And so this dean at the college saw that, and she decided to line a scholarship up at the school. And then she just approached me and asked me, did I want to go to the school? Did I want to go to the school? And I was kind of floundering around trying to find myself. I mean, other than just speaking and writing, I didn't know what I was going to really do. And I generally lacked an overall routine in everyday life. So for those reasons, then, I didn't know what else to do. So I just decided to accept their offer. And so that was how and then I was able to springboard from that and, ultimately get get the master's degree and the law degree.
I mean, I hear you and I hear, I coach clients on kind of how to quit playing small, get out of their way and that self-doubt, right? Having that self-doubt. But even though, yeah, you may have those moments of, is this really going to happen? Is it too good to be true?
Right.
But you aren't letting this define you, right? Like this
Right.
happened. It's not defining you. You're finding solutions and you're like, how can I use this to create something more and
Yeah.
help others? And that's so beautiful. That's just absolutely beautiful and so inspiring because you've had many days to yourself to think about what's next. And so, I love how you continue to learn and grow and read and all of that. And um, yeah, so talk a little bit about, so you went and you got your master's and now what are you doing? Like you're,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. So after getting the bachelor's degree, and I took the LSAT, the law school entrance exam, and I applied to law school, and I didn't score well on the standardized test, and I applied anyway, and ultimately I didn't get in. And so I worked for about 6 months in this dead end job that I hated. I tried to go to work every day. And
Oh,
finally I said, look, this doesn't make any sense. I'm miserable. I hate what I'm doing. It's mediocre money. I'm miserable. I think that I should just go and get a master's degree and then come back out and see what the job market looks like then. So I did that, and at some point shortly, right around the same time that I graduated, I was able to get some financial compensation, and I made the decision that I wanted to take my advocacy work to the next level. So I used some of the money to start the foundation, which I referenced. And at some point in there, I just well, actually I'll tell the story real quick. So I did a presentation in front of a bunch of judges at the Judicial Institute, and I was chit chatting with one of the judges in the hallway afterwards, and she said, these topics better than like a lot of lawyers and even some judges, which is why we had you come and address this, because I was speaking about substantive legal topics. I wasn't just like talking about my story. I was talking about other things and only incorporating my story when it made sense to support a point or two.
mhm.
And she said, so why don't you just go and get the credential? And that kind of ended the debate in my mind as to whether I wanted to go to law school again, because I was thinking, well, this is 3 hard years in law school studying for and trying to pass the bar exam. A lot of my time is going to be spent on things not directly advocacy related. Do I really want to do that? So I'd been debating that in my mind. And when she said that to me, it kind of ended the debate. And so I decided to, make another foray into trying to go to law school. And this time I did get in. And so in terms of what I'm doing right now, so I'm as of October 26th, I'm an attorney now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So cool. That's so exciting.
Thank you. So, uh, so, um, so I'm currently, so I'm still with the foundation. We have 11 active cases, and I've entered a couple of those cases as co-counsel, and there's a couple of others where I'm taking the lead. Continuing to do advocacy work. So we're currently working on campaigns with the coalition group. It could happen to you. We're working on a campaign in New York, trying to repass the oversight board for prosecutors and to get rid of exceptions when it comes to the law that mandates police videotaping of interrogations. In Pennsylvania, we are working again the oversight of the prosecutors. And Pennsylvania is one of 15 states that does not compensate exonerees. So we're working at passing that. In California, we're again trying to have the oversight for the prosecutors, and we're trying to get rid of. We think there's an opportunity to get rid of capital punishment there. So I'm involved in those campaigns as well, and we're still doing media interviews and meeting with the electeds, and I'm also, my role in that is not just using my case and meeting with the electeds, but I'm also the coalition's liaison to the exoneree community. So when we need exonerees, they call me to then recall all of them, because they
Just,
don't. Yeah,
yeah.
so there's that. But maybe the last thing I'll mention is my appointment's almost up, but I've been selected to I've been working on the transition community, the transition team to the incoming Westchester District Attorney. So I'm assigned specifically to the Conviction Integrity Unit. We're just prepping the way, just drafting memos and best practices of how that unit within the DA's office will work, that will proactively look for wrongful conviction cases. So there's that, and also on the Peekskill Police Task Force Reform Group. So I'm going over police procedures and policies within that subcommittee with actually a retired cop and two current, the police chief
Oh, wow.
and the county police officer who's got a high position. So just going over their manual and just making suggestions for improvement and updating it with a view of, what are the best practices, what's been proven to cause wrongful conviction before, and what can they do voluntarily as part of their manual. I mean, the goal always is to legislate so that the best practices are mandatory, but you can get voluntary compliance ahead of time, since that's like more of a slow plotting type of procedure. You're so much the better.
In this,
One more thing I'm doing, we're also trying to raise funds as well, so I have, donors that I'm chasing after, metaphorically speaking, because, we initially had a paid staff, and that was really because I was writing a large check every month. But after doing that for 3 years, I had to convert the entity to, a volunteer organization, and we've gotten some success that way as well. And it's better than not like shutting down, but at the same time, that's not really the way I want to operate. I really would like to. I know what worked well for us before. I know what could be improved. And the ultimate goal is to, again, have a staff, because, with attorneys, paralegals, investigators, other essential personnel, to really go hard at this, like 40, 50 hours a week, rather than, attorneys doing things as they're able to fit it in as amongst their paid cases, because I know what it is to be waiting and be on the other side of that.
yeah, I think about, yeah, you got out, just the cases, how many people are wrongfully accused that are in there, just like the process that it takes to do it all. Um, in a weird, crazy world that we live in, I mean, it's almost like this experience. I mean, this experience led you to your purpose.
100%. Yes, it definitely did. I do believe that this is my purpose in the world, and I do make sense of how everything happened to me in that way. And it does. If I can take my suffering and make it count for something, and I can take some meaning in that. I take the energy that I would feel and I channel it into the advocacy work that I do, and I think it's healing and cathartic, and it's making my legacy and trying to leave the place a little bit better than how I found it.
Yeah, yeah. It's healing. I bet it's healing to,
Very healing. Yeah, it's definitely very healing. Sure.
yeah.
In terms of frequency, which you started to get at a minute ago, I just wanted to point out the context that per the National Registry of Exonerations, there's been 2,705 people exonerated across the country just tracing from 1989 forward. And, those are just the people that made it out and that were proven innocent. There's no way of knowing exactly how many people are wrongfully in prison.
Yeah. Yeah. You're able to, you've got the knowledge and the history of being there to be able to answer these, these questions and help. And now you're a lawyer and you're able to advocate. And that's just, if you look at those times that you're thinking about, am I going to get out? What's going to happen? To see like the steps where you are now, to fast forward and to say like, I'm a freaking lawyer. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, right, right. It is kind of like I'm living the dream right now in a way, because I certainly could have never, anticipated that, or, even the turns that my life took overall. I remember when I was maybe 3 or 4 years away from, you know, well, what turned out to be my last 3 or 4 years in prison. And I remember thinking, man, I'm in such a desperate position here. And, my appeals have been up and then I've been turned down for parole. I've wrote letters for 4 years and no one's answered me. I really am up the creek right here. But if despite all that, I somehow managed to get the heck out of here, I'm going to become a lawyer and free other people the same position. But all it felt like was just like some pipe dream, almost like whistling in the dark. Because what are the odds that that's ever going to happen given the circumstances? But it did. But it did.
It did. It did. And it's all the steps that it took for you to get here, but you did it and you followed through for you, not for, like you're doing this for you, for your legacy.
Yes.
And it's almost you're making up for those times lost,
Yeah.
you're
Yes. Exactly. Sure. And just to build off that point, there were several articles written by two different reporters, two different public.
Whoops, you froze a sec. You there? Oh, we're freezing.
A year to make up 16 years. And it had this quote from me in there. Is something to the effect of saying that, I feel like I'm trapped, and no matter how fast or hard I run, I can't make up for the time. Yeah. So
Yeah, and I know it's like there's so many things that you want to do, and anyone who's listening, you think of these things that you want to create and do, and then, but I think it's really important to say that there is no age limit on
right,
pursuing. There's no, and sometimes we think we're too old to go back to school
right,
or
right.
too old to start, but it's yeah. I mean, you just have to do it, right? You just
You
have to.
just have to do it. Yeah, sure. I remember thinking. In fact, someone told me, and I thought it made sense. Look, it's 3 hard years of law school. Okay, sure, but look, right? Provided you don't pass away, the 3 years is going to come and go, right? And you're still. The question is, are you going to have completed this and been further along in your journey, or are you going to instead just stay in that same position where you are? So
Mhm.
I feel like that's the right approach, and that it's really never too late, to do things. But I feel like my experience has really shaped a lot of my perspectives. Like I just learning to just never give up, or I believe in chasing dreams, like working really, really hard, and having a plan and being willing to adjust your plan along the way. If you can do that, then I think the right doors are open for you at the right time. But being, willing to chance everything, and in going for that, you have to be willing to fail. If that's, you know, you have to be willing to chance failing to try. That's better than not trying at all. So those things, and then just enjoying freedom of travel, or this, movement, the fresh air. just the fresh air. I like feeling the fresh air on my face. I like feeling the sun on me. I like being able to just sit down outside in the dark. So, I mean, these are all things that I never really thought twice about before.
It's the simple, yeah.
So,
We take for granted some of the simple things, but having fresh, even cold air on your face and
yes.
the aliveness of it. You know, you've been a pretty smart guy. Now, how has it affected you with your social emotional intelligence, just like socially coming out and engaging with others and even perhaps dating or, like how has that been? It's almost like you were in a time capsule of,
Yes. Yes, I have been in a time capsule. In fact, I was when I was released at 32, I felt like I was 17 because that was the age that I was last free. In fact, uh, that was even the title of an article in the New York Times, and released at 32, but feeling 17.
Mm,
So yeah, there is that, but there is the disconnect between the psychological, emotional versus the physical. So, I mean, even now, I mean, I'm 47. I've been home for 14 years, but I don't feel like I'm 47. I feel like maybe I'm 25 or 26.
mhm.
You know? But and that's proven to be difficult. So I mean, associations and friendships are often based on commonalities, common interests, common hobbies. So part of the challenge in my developing social relationships has been, look, what are we going to do in common? Okay. I want to throw a ball around still. I want to go on the bumper cars.
Ah.
Experience the nightlife. Let's
Want to
travel
go to the
to
clubs?
some country. Let's go to a nightclub. Let's go to other countries. Let's find some kind of wild party to get into. Things like that. But who are my peers to do that with? Okay, the other people that are my age, you know, they've been there and done that. That's not where they're at. They're in a totally different walk of life than I am. They don't. A lot of people don't really seem to be committed to having a balanced life. They maybe work all day, come home, eat something, watch an hour or two of television, and go to sleep, and just live for the weekend. But I'm looking to do something fun every night of one kind or another. So having people that have commonalities, that have some room, that all their primary and secondary relationships aren't already like taken already, so that there's a room for me to be of something other than just someone that they get together with every couple of months, just a bit player on the peripheral. So that's proven to be difficult. And then when as I feel and I'm thinking more like a younger person, but then when you get down to a certain age, I mean, they're not really looking at me as a peer anymore. I could be like their father's age, right? I'm the square that couldn't possibly be any fun. But then also, and when once you get to a certain point, then I got to question what their maturity level is also. So there's the age, availability, um, within a reasonable distance, because I don't want everything to have to like be planned. I like the ability to try to be spontaneous. So if someone lives 2 or 3 hours away, or there's people I know in other states, and sometimes that's fun, but that has to be planned, and that's a plane. That's not like, hey, Ro, what are you doing tonight? What are you
Yeah.
up to? I'm coming over. Let's go out here. Right. So yeah. So those things have proven to be challenges. I've had to learn a lot in terms of relationships. I mean, I was incarcerated when I was 16 and was released when I was 32. So the whole age where people are
Prime
dating,
dating life.
dating
Yeah.
and approach dynamics, and I had to try to, I had no idea of what I was doing. I had to try to learn all of that again. It was something I hadn't done before, and then I
Plus, on
also,
top of that, you didn't really have a father figure.
and right on top of that, I didn't have a father figure. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then I had on the back of my mind as well, like I wasn't just wrongfully imprisoned for murder, but there was also a rape charge, and I don't want anyone to say, well, I mean, look, I don't think people are going to just suddenly come out of nowhere and say, I tried to rape them, even though that's happened of other people. And but it's more that I don't want someone to say that I made them feel uncomfortable, and just the challenges of, when you navigating nuances. Like if you meet somebody in one context, if I meet someone, just networking, or they've encountered me through just doing advocacy or at one event or another. I mean, how do you go from that to trying to just interact socially?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I mean, so all those things, have all those things have been challenges as well.
I would think also, I mean, you
Stigma,
were wrong. What's
I'm
up?
sorry, just one more thing, just there's a stigmatic aspect, which we talked a little bit about last time. You were in prison for 16 years wrongfully, but you were away for 16 years. How much of that rubbed off on you? Is it safe to be alone someplace with you? And not that I'm volunteering that to people, but I'm really not much of a liar. And it's a short 2 or 3 questions to, what do you do and how'd you get into that? And it's just a short 2 or 3 questions, and the whole background's on the table, and that can be a bit much, and hence the stigma then coming into play there.
I would imagine it's, you're wrongfully convicted, but then it's, people having the misconception or just saying, well, but you were still in jail, you were still
Right.
there. And being able to move past that and see you for who you are and the work that you do, and that doesn't define you. And um, yeah, so I can
Yeah,
imagine.
you got it exactly right. I mean, and there's a scene in the documentary Conviction where I'm saying, that what's frustrating in that scenario is that I'm the same thing as I'm just as innocent as everybody else out here in the world that's never been arrested for something that they did. It's the only difference is that I was arrested for something that I didn't do and they were not. And other than that, I'm just as innocent as them. And I would hope that I could be seen that way, but I know that at least some of the time that's not that's not what that's not what the reality is. And you could take a mental approach and say people have suggested that I look at it. Well, look, if people can't accept you for who you are, and then that wasn't the right person for you, or they weren't worthy of you, and yeah, okay, great. All that makes sense and on one level. But in a larger sense, at the end of the day, I'm still the one that's losing out. I'm still the one wondering, well, what if?
Mm.
What if I was in a different, totally set of circumstances and I met this person or that person? Would it actually have worked out? Would it not have?
It's, gosh, I mean, as human beings, right, we're always, we have the self-doubt or we have the thoughts that get in our way, but then now it's on top of that to, okay, so is what they're saying true? Do they not, is it because of my past? All of that. But I would say to you, Jeff, I would say, at the end of the day, it's you continue to do the work that you do, and you will attract the right people into your space, and the right people that want to be your friend and hang out with you. And yeah, and I can imagine also being in the quote unquote spotlight of, having to be, you're a nice guy, having to create boundaries as well. So just
Yes.
learning and navigating all of that as well. I mean, we're all doing it as individuals, but on on another scale for you to have to, um, yeah, navigate through that. What,
I
um,
wanted to point something else interesting out, just different facet of the same topic. Um, just another difference, another challenge connected to that is, just being in a different socioeconomic status place. I mean, I've been compensated, and you know, um, I don't have to work for a living, and I get a certain amount of money every month from dividends and interest that are earned, which allows me to spend my time doing advocacy work. But it gets it gets awkward sometimes, out to eat with people and the check comes and like everyone's just like looking around and no one's reaching and they're just expectation.
Oh,
So I get,
wow.
yeah, and I mean, I had to even stop getting together with quite a bit of people because that came to be, expected. And, and another thing is, after a while, I mean, the idea that, unless Jeff pays for everything, nobody can afford to go. I mean, after a while, that gets tiring after a while. So that creates a different, another challenge to try to navigate and, what to do in those situations. And, does it get awkward? You know, um, I can't tell you the number of people that, just stop talking to me. People come to look at me at times as, the answer to one sob story or another, one issue or another. Some scam, some not legit, some completely
Uh,
legit. But I'm not the world's savior in that way. The market's not making quite as much as people think, you know. So but I've had, people just get mad at me or just stop talking with me, because of that. When I do say no, I can't. No, I'm sorry, I can't.
yeah.
All those are different challenges that have to be navigated as well.
Yeah. So then what would you say is something that, well, what is something that you do that kind of protects your peace and keeps you, grounded and feeling good? And yeah, what are you
Well, I
working
try to
on?
remember. Well, I try to remember, where I was and where I came from and how it used to be.
Mhm.
So that definitely keeps me grounded. I mean, I feel grateful that I've had educational opportunities that other people, haven't had, which is why I do, part of the reason why I do the work that I do. I mean, I think that because a lot of people haven't had those same chances, I can be more of a change agent than what other people can. So I enjoy doing those things. And another thing is, it's nice to socialize with other people doing advocacy work, even though those aren't really the type of friendships that we're really talking about, throwing the ball around or going in a nightclub or doing bumper cars or whatever. But some social, that's nice as well. And I do play chess. I do like playing chess, which is, people that when you have to think further ahead. That's a game that requires you to think ahead if you're going to win. So I do enjoy doing that, and so that does give me some level of peace in playing.
Yeah, finding things that make you feel good and that, yeah, protect, and then your emotional health too, making sure
Yes,
that you're taking care of your emotional health. I think
sure.
it,
Yeah, and I think that some of the things that I enjoy, I like doing things. I like having new experiences. So I like doing new activities, going to new places or trying new food. So if I'm at a restaurant and I see something I haven't eaten there before, I'm much more likely to order that than to just something tried or true. So yeah, going to new places, trying new food, travel. I enjoy those things, and when the world, obviously mostly when the world's normal, and I really enjoy going to sporting events. So I like doing those things. Those things give me some enjoyment, and that helps to ground me some. But I do struggle quite a bit when it comes to trying to find work-life balance. And after a
sure.
while, I get worn down, and I feel like like I'm not a machine. I can't work 24/7 or all the time. I have to have some things. I have to have something I enjoy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so this is leading me to the as we are wrapping up. I usually end the pod with 5 questions, kind of a bonus round to get
Yeah,
to
yeah,
know
yeah.
get
Nice.
to know you.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
we've shared a lot about the past and the current self, but so for the first question, since you've been free and out, at what's one of your favorite places that you've been able to travel to or visit?
Yes. Great favorite place I've been able to travel to or visit. Well, I took a I did a cruise on a boat to that went to Jesus, can I not remember the island that I went to?
Hey, it's an island. It's
It's an
it's
island, okay?
tropical.
Right, yeah, so, yeah, so that, yeah, I enjoyed that, and I really liked going to the Barclays Center, which is a stadium built in New Jersey for the Brooklyn Nets. So that and going to Madison Square Garden, those were places that I really have enjoyed going to. I love going to Florida. I know a lot of people in Florida. Um, my cousin lives there, and other people that I knew before I was incarcerated lived there, and other people that I've met along the advocacy journey live there.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm sure there's so many more places. So yeah, being able to visit and see places. What is something that brings you joy?
Trying new things. Number one, trying new things. I mentioned playing chess. I mentioned going to sporting events, doing doing new things, and then lastly, maybe doing things that are energetic, that are energy based.
So the opposite of that, what's something that makes you angry? I think I may know this.
um, so I don't like it. So one thing that makes me angry is that when people respond to something that I'm say, but just in regular conversation, when someone responds to something I say by asking a question, but like in a condescending tone of voice and using language that suggests that what I just asked or said doesn't make any sense. So I lose patience rather quickly at that. And I quickly point out, no, I'm saying this because of this and this and this and that and this. Did you think about those things, by the way? Did those options even occur to you? Probably not, right? You didn't see it, but I see the options. So that part of it angers me. And it does. I do get upset just in seeing this. There's a lot of. I mean, when it comes to exonerating people, I mean, I hate the obstinance. That why would you not allow somebody to have DNA testing, where they've got new evidence that's compelling, but yet the district attorney just fights against that.
Mm.
So those things, people abusing their trust. Those things really upset me. And and frankly, sometimes I feel upset when I feel like I'm you know locked out of society, when my social life isn't really what I want it to be, and I feel like I'm still locked up, right? Only thing is that there's no bars on me. I mean, but I'm an observer rather than a participant.
Mhm.
So those things really get my goat.
Sure. You want to feel seen and heard and
Yeah,
yeah, seen equal. Yeah.
yeah. Maybe one more thing I'll throw in on that is, I do I really I hate being interrupted because I couldn't get my voice heard for 16 years.
Uh,
Okay, so if you interrupt, and then I know what things I'm trying to say. I usually don't just talk to talk. If I'm going to say something, there's something to what I'm about to come up with. And look, I'm not perfect. So in getting impatient when that happens, I mean, sometimes I say to people, look, you know what? You're interrupting me. I don't like to be interrupted. I was going to say something important. So since you're interrupting me, let's hear what you have. Okay. I hope that it's good because I was going to say something good. Let's hear it. You
oh,
know,
yeah.
and if it's not good and there's no depth to it and it's not really adding anything, it kind of infuriates me a little bit. So something I need to work on some myself. But that is, since we're having a forthright conversation here, I would be rude
Yeah.
not to share that.
I can understand that. I definitely could. I tell my daughter, I'm not comparing you to my daughter. I'm saying like when I feel
Right.
that way, it's like, what is it? Daniel Tiger, take a deep breath and count to 4. That's
Maybe
what we
I'll try that. I'm going to try that technique. But I love learning new things, and I like self-improvement, and I like implementing things. And sometimes when I remember when I read a lot of self-help books while I was incarcerated, I like used myself as the data, and I just reflected on myself and what was being said, and either and sometimes I can tell, yeah, something's valid or not so much. I don't really see that.
Yes. Beautiful. Okay, something that you're afraid of.
Wow. Uh, all right. So I'm very cautious. Um, I think I'm very responsible financially, but one thing I'm very afraid of is going broke. I
Mhm.
don't think God willing, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'll share with you. I mean, the only money that I spend is money that's earned monthly. I don't spend the principal because I never want to go back to having nothing. But nonetheless, despite that, that's definitely a fear that I have. And another fear that I have is I'm afraid of heights.
Okay. Okay. No big mountains for you.
Well, only if there's a well, no, I could go up a mountain, but it just if there's no, and I'm not afraid to be in a plane. I've been in a helicopter. It's more like being afraid of a height where falling off of something is a possibility. So maybe like being on a ladder, or I mean, I could never like when people do like work in heavy construction and they're walking around on beams, and uh,
Sure.
I would never do that. Just on my fear alone, I'd fall off. Right, the very thing I'm dreading is more likely to happen because of my concern. So that's another thing.
No washing. Okay, so then the final question, what is a mini or a big goal that you have for yourself?
So a big goal. So a big goal that just how far do I want to go? All right, I'm gonna say the whole thing. Okay, I'm
Okay,
gonna say the whole
speak
thing.
it into existence.
Yes, there we go. All right, all right. So um, sometime within the next 8 years, I think, right? Maybe sooner if something happens. But right now, the way I see the reality in the world, I would say maybe 8 years. So I think a big goal would be that I would become the district attorney and have a real conviction review unit. And when the time is right, maybe after one term or maybe two, run for governor. And
Ah,
and if you become the governor, you from of New York, you have to play Powerball. In other words, you have to run for president from there.
oh,
Okay, so
yes, yes. Amazing. I love it. Yay. Well, Jeff, it's been amazing. It's been really good to connect with you. And thank you for your time for the past couple weeks. And it's just really, you're an inspiration to many. And how can, if people are listening or tuning in, how can they find you and
yes,
contact you?
yeah, sure. So I mean, I do have a Facebook page. My name Jeffrey Deskovic. Kind of boring, I guess, but that's what it is. And then also there's our website, www.deskovic. That's DESKOVIC .org. One more quick dream is that since I see wrongful conviction as a worldwide issue. It's not just in New York, it's across the country, it's not just in the US, it's worldwide. And the reason we don't hear about wrongful conviction in other countries is not because it's not happening. What's happening is that there are no people working on it. So there's no exonerations happening. So my ultimate goal on that aspect of it is having a chapter of the foundation in each state and ultimately in each country, and just have a lasting imprint that way. And maybe I'll meet the right people along the way, a bunch of people I suppose that'll join in on the dream and assist me. So
Hmm,
maybe the right people
wonderful.
will show up. I keep working hard and making the right decisions and having a plan. The right people will show up at the right time and help. But look, I'm a people person, and love to hear from people. Love to, if you can email me through the website, there's a mechanism for doing that. I respond back to the emails, and I'm a people person, so I love hearing from new people. And even if it's just a short message of encouragement, of warmth, of empathy, that's all healing. That all further encourages me and fortifies me, along, because the journey is long and the path is hard, and it sometimes feels lonely out there on work, walking down this difficult path of doing advocacy work. So any encouragement along the way, it definitely means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for the work that you do and to keep fighting the good fight. We
Absolutely. Thanks
appreciate
for having
you.
me on, and I'm reaching your audience and your fans. And again, one more time, just please, if you haven't seen it, please check out the documentary short called Convictions, available on Amazon Prime. And hey, if you like it, drop a comment in the
Yes.
section.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's great. It's great. It's short, it's sweet, and then I think there's a longer version coming out soon. So
Yes, there is. Yes, absolutely. Yes, yeah, yeah. We're nearing the end of expanded version, which will be an hour and a half. They'll explore
beautiful.
story not there, and we'll have some other people play different facets of my life, or in the case on the side. So looking forward to that and what that brings. And it's been great working with Gia, and I'm anticipating continuing to do that in the future. And I just feel like just the level of exposure I've gotten from the documentary, from all the increased media opportunities and new media that's happened just from the documentary, it's been great. And I'm hoping to get an even bigger boost from the
Absolutely.
version. Yeah.
Absolutely sharing your story, the power of media and the internet and just getting it. Yeah. Letting people know that they're not alone. And yeah.
Yeah, it's inspiring for other people. And a lot of people who've come home that we haven't exonerated, but that other people have. They said, look, you just don't realize that you being out there doing advocacy work, that was inspirational for me. That helped me to keep going. And as go I, as goes the foundation, as goes the larger issue of wrongful conviction. And again, along the way, who knows, what people become aware of the cause and do what action, or are aware of us and they want to help out in whichever way. It's no telling how that can really go. So I'm excited about the future. And maybe the last thing I'll say is I enjoy living a purpose-driven life. And so if
Mhm.
you're listening out there, whatever it is that's your passion, whatever it is your dream, try to find a way to let that be what you do each day. Let that figure out how can you turn that into your living, rather than just doing something just for a paycheck that's empty. Maybe do that in the short run. Have what you want and work towards that, and you have your exit strategy. Having a purpose-driven life is more fulfilling, I think, and maximizes our potential. So I want to encourage everyone to do
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. It's do the thing, try the thing. We only get one shot, right?
that.
So
That's right.
in life. So just yeah, persistence, consistency, all of the above. Thank you, Jeff. So good to be with you. And I'll let you know when this is. I'll send you a link when we're
Please do. Thank you.
okay. Take care. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.